Conservancy in New Jersey. I want to welcome everyone on behalf of the New Jersey Statewide Dam Removal Partnership, which I'll just refer to as the partnership going forward. And I'll let you know that the partnership is a collaboration of nonprofits and government agencies that seek to advance the removal of antiquated, dangerous, or ecologically detrimental dams. Its members meet quarterly to discuss beneficial dam removal projects and to exchange information regarding policy, regulatory issues, funding, and the practical considerations of dam removal. The partnership also provides information to the public about how dams and dam removal may affect their communities and their lives. And our meeting goals for today are that participants leave with an understanding for the case for dam removal, basic understanding of the removal process in New Jersey, including some of the partners that you'll meet in a bit. We as a partnership would like to gain a better understanding of what resources are needed by dam owners and those working on dam removal. So please feel free to share in the chat or at the different times when we ask what we can do to help move your work forward. And it also is a way for us to find and connect people working on dam removal. So our agenda, which appeared in your registration information, is that we'll get started with the welcome and putting up the agenda, and then we'll move on to partner agency snapshots. It's a chance for us to meet some of the very many. It was kind of hard to pick a good kind of spectrum of our partners because we do have so many working on dam removal in New Jersey, just to give people an idea of what kind of help is out there and what kind of work is being done. Then we'll move on to just a quick look at some of the more regional partners that you might be working with, and then we'll have time for questions. Just a reminder, again, to enter questions in chat as we go along. We will stop once in the middle of our presenters for a quick poll. When you answer polls, your answers are anonymous. So like when they're put up on the screen, no one will know what your response is. But again, that's a way for us to find out, how we can be most helpful. So we're going to go ahead and get started then with our first presenters, who are, I'm going to say both, I'm not sure if both are on the phone with us, but Clint Oman and Zach Cole from the NJDEP Bureau of Dam Safety.
I'll be doing the presentation. My name is Clint. I am the Bureau Chief for the Dam Safety Program. It's tough to condense, everything that we do in 5 minutes, but I'll do my best. The goal of the Dam Safety Program, as the name implies, is to ensure the safety and integrity of dams throughout the state, thereby protecting people and property which are located downstream of dams from the consequences of dam failure. We are a program within DEP under the Climate and Flood Resilience Group, based out of Trenton, although we've been working remotely since March, and we have a staff of 7 engineers responsible for the oversight of all the dams. In New Jersey, we define a dam as a structure with the potential to raise the water level 5 feet, and that's measured from the downstream toe of the dam to the emergency spillway crest, or in the absence of emergency spillway, the top of the dam. Our current inventory includes about 1,700 dams, which range in height from 5 feet, which is the minimum, to 280 feet in height, which is our largest dam in Warren County. The map on the right shows the location of all the dams, and they're color coded based on hazard class. We have 3 primary hazard classifications in the state. Class 1 high hazard dams are dams that if they were to fail, they would result in potential loss of life and significant property damage. Class 2 significant hazard dams have the potential to result in significant property damage, but will not likely result in loss of life. And then low hazard dams are those dams that, besides the loss of the dam itself, should result in little to no property damage downstream.
I'm just saying that they can't manage the
So, Clint, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just a reminder, can you please double check and make sure that you are muted? Thank you. Go ahead, Clint.
He's
Clint,
on mute.
He's muted.
Yeah, Clint is on mute.
There you go.
I got muted. That's okay. So hazard creep is a condition where a dam is, built as a low hazard dam. There's development downstream, post construction, and the hazard condition or hazard classification changes. So we do see that a lot. Currently, we have 230 high hazard dams, about 330 significant hazard dams, and over 1,100 low hazard dams. And I just want to point out that hazard class has nothing to do with the condition of the dam. It's strictly the potential for downstream damage. Our program works under the authority of the Safe Dam Act, which basically dictates that no one shall construct, operate, repair, maintain, improve a dam without approval from DEP. This includes removal. The main focus is on compliance in our office, which is the responsibility of the dam owner. And compliance can be achieved through either rehabilitation or removal. Both are viable options. We're not, we don't have a preference one way or the other. We just want compliance. The dam safety standards provide the regulations under the Safe Dam Act. And it's quite a long document, but it outlines all the regulatory requirements required for dams, including spillway design storms, stability requirements, inspection frequency. For inspections, Class 1 and Class 2 dams require inspections every 2 years, and Class 3 dams require inspections every 4 years. We also have a Class 4 designation, which is detention basins, which really doesn't apply to the goal of the state dam removal partnership. Next slide, please, Beth. So of most interest to this group, obviously, is that the standards outline the 9 requirements for dam removal. We don't have time to go through all the requirements, but I just want to touch on some of the more prominent ones that come into play for most removals. The main thing, given how populated of a state we are, is that the removal must be designed as to not increase downstream flooding. And we're looking at the 10, the 50, and the 100-year events for that. On a lot of the run-of-the-river dam removals, this is not an issue at all. The picture on the right is removal on the Raritan about 5 years ago. And you can tell just based on the size of that dam, it's pretty much submerged during most flow conditions during storm events. So it was a non-issue. But other times breaches must be sized to not increase flooding downstream. And this would come into play more for a traditional impoundment type of dam with an earthen embankment. Another issue that comes into play a lot is sediment management. A permit to decommission must address sediment. We don't want the uncontrolled release of sediment to happen. So there will be a need to either stabilize sediment, remove some sediment, or other means to essentially result in a controlled release of sediment to minimize downstream impacts. And again, this is different. Every project's different. So it's something that is, often comes up. Another important factor in removals is that public notice is required. It's required to all adjacent property owners of the impoundment and the municipality in which the dam is located. So this process is written into the Safe Dam Act, and it provides an opportunity for the public to comment. They can oppose the removal. There is a process outlined that requires us to hold a public hearing if there is public opposition. The majority of removals have not had any opposition, but there's been a few, most recently Columbia, which Beth is very familiar with, that had significant public opposition. So the hearing process essentially solicits comments from the public, and ultimately the DEP commissioner decides if the permit is approved or not. Just because there's opposition doesn't mean the permit isn't going to get approved, but there is, we do weigh everyone's comments before a permit is issued. We do rely heavily on our Fish and Wildlife folks at DEP. We are not, biologists, we are engineers in the dam safety program. So we rely heavily on them to minimize environmental impacts, making sure that the project is not going to be more of a detriment than an improvement to the environment. And they also provide us with the timing restrictions on when the work can be effected in order to minimize the potential for environmental impacts downstream. So I just want to note that the majority of removals are not overcomplicated from a dam safety standpoint, and no one should be afraid of the process. But each project is unique. There will be some projects that have a lot of complicated challenges to deal with, but the majority of projects I think are not, they're definitely not undoable. You just have to think ahead and get coordination with all the local partners and make sure everyone's on board. And the goals of the project will significantly vary. Sometimes it's strictly fish passage, other times it's a water quality project. So every removal is different. There's no standard removal project. Run of the river removal will be quite different than a traditional impoundment with an earthen dam that provides for flood attenuation. So again, that's something that, I don't want anyone to be scared of the process. We're here to help, but certainly doable. Some important factors to consider for a successful removal is hiring a consultant with prior dam safety experience. Dam safety is a very unique field. An engineer that does mainly site development might not be your best engineer for a dam removal project. So in order for a project to go smoothly, we recommend a consultant with prior dam safety knowledge and experience. A pre-app meeting is always recommended anytime. And again, it doesn't have to be with just us. We can have land use, HPO, Fish and Wildlife on board. So that's something we definitely recommend to help a project go forward. And then timing, provide ample timing for review. There's a lot of different agencies involved. So if you have a project scheduled for August, you shouldn't submit it in June and anticipate everything moving forward without any hiccups. So definitely allow ample time. And that's just a quick 5-minute overview of our program. Certainly we can provide for any answers, any questions you have at the end. But with that, I'll turn it back over to Beth.
Thanks very much, Clint. And also just a note that we will have an entire session just on permitting, and I'm sure that Clint will be back then to get into maybe some more details on the permit. Okay, so now we're going to move to Evan Madlinger from NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service.
Can you hear me okay, Beth? Or?
Yep, I can hear you. Yep.
Great. So yeah, I'm just going to give a quick couple minutes here about NRCS and kind of our role in dam removal. For some of you that may not be familiar with NRCS, we're actually an agency that resides under the United States Department of Agriculture. And primarily our role is to work with private landowners to incentivize doing the right thing environmentally. Our bread and butter is really on agricultural land and on soil erosion. That's kind of, we came out of the Dust Bowl. We were created to work with farmers to better manage their soils, but then over the years we've morphed into kind of all resource concerns on private lands, and so that is kind of our focus. So one of those things is dam removal, and NRCS has really been involved from the very beginning, back when some of the first dams came out in New Jersey. So I'm really proud of that fact. And we continue to be involved all the way up into the present day on a lot of the dam removal activities. I, as a biologist with NRCS, sit on the statewide dam removal committee, and are kind of NRCS's liaison to that committee. While a big role is providing funding, we do have a lot of technical expertise within NRCS. As I mentioned, I'm a biologist myself. We have engineers on staff, we have soil scientists, we get into some fish passage and other specialties when we get to the regional and national level, kind of nationwide. NRCS has been involved with dam removals throughout the country, and we have field offices scattered throughout the country that basically cover all the United States and our possessions. Yesterday, Beth was talking about how different agencies kind of have different priorities. And so, why is NRCS involved with dam removal? What's in it for us? The two main reasons are on the water quality end. You get into soil erosion, sedimentation, flooding, all those things that go along with water quality. I'd say that's a big reason that NRCS is involved. And also from a wildlife habitat standpoint, we care about fish habitat, fish, migratory fish movement, and just if we improve our rivers, we improve that wildlife habitat. So those are some big things that get into it. And we do focus even on some human impacts as well. Humans are one of our, core resource concerns we look at, impacts on humans. So we do care about safety and other things too, that go along with dams, especially when they're in not good shape. One of the things with us, I think, Kathy had mentioned yesterday with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we as a federal agency do abide by NEPA policy. So we're looking at, all the considerations that go into these dam removals, whether they be historic or impacts to T&E species, just a whole suite of things. And so the nice thing is, if we're the primary funder, we can kind of take the lead on those issues. So if it's, you know, some interaction with the State Historic Preservation Office and making sure that we're looking at cultural resources, we actually have a staff person within NRCS that is our liaison with SHPO and can work through some of those issues. You know, we actually, if you need an archaeologist on a dam removal we're involved in and we're the primary funder, we can help pay. We will pay for basically that archaeological survey to be done. So, so there's some good things there that when we're involved, we can really help offset in addition to just some cost sharing. And kind of, well, and I kind of mentioned already with the SHPO, but also some permitting too. Being the federal government, we have some ability to have some potentially streamlined permitting or some permits that are available to us, you know, as a federal agency that other people may not be available to. So that can be helpful too when we're involved in these projects. And then I had mentioned our Farm Bill conservation programs. And I'm just going to touch on this briefly. I think next month we're going to be getting into this a little bit more with the funding seminar. But there is, you know, a handful of programs. Primarily our environmental quality incentives program is a kind of our bread and basket program in New Jersey. We get anywhere from $5 to $6 million for that program every year. And in that program, we can fund dam removals. With us, I kind of mentioned it's private land, and without getting too deep into the weeds, you know, there are some ways that we can work on public land, you know, through maybe a nonprofit or other partners. So, but primarily, you know, we're focused on private land. And one of the hardest things for us, particularly the EQIP, is we really need to be focused on kind of working lands with these dams. So we really primarily want to work on dams that are in agricultural settings or in forested settings. It gets a little difficult for us to work on say a dam in the middle of a town or in a park where it's clearly, you know, not working lands around it. But as was mentioned yesterday, you know, every dam's different, every scenario is a little different. And so really on a case by case, would be something that we would look at there. So the other caveat with our EQIP program is we are kind of capped at, as it stands currently, at $450,000 for a project under that program. You know, sometimes it's enough. Sometimes these dams are a couple $100,000, and sometimes they're significantly more than that. So oftentimes NRCS on these bigger projects tend to be a partner amongst others, as we see is so important on these. So, you know, very commonly we'll partner with other nonprofits, or U.S. Fish and Wildlife we partner with very often. So that, and then there's a couple other programs we have just very briefly. Another is more of an easement focused program. We've taken out a couple dams of that where we buy, it's called our Wetland Reserve Enhancement Program, or Wetland Reserve Easement Program, sorry. And that would be something where we look to restore wetlands. And there's been some times where dams have been associated with that. So we've taken some dams out that way. And then there's some bigger, more national and regional programs, regional conservation partnership program we used in Columbia, where you can get some larger amounts of money. And again, I'll get into all that later when we get into the funding program next month, but just for an awareness level. So yeah, so kind of just a brief, quick overview here without getting too far into the weeds. And, you know, if there's between now and next month, if you have a project you think NRCS may be able to help with, please feel free to reach out to me and be glad to talk to you about it. And look forward to maybe talking to you guys more about what NRCS can offer when we get to that funding section next month. So,
great. Thanks very much, Evan. And we look forward to hearing more at the funding session. Next up, we have Jake Helminiak with the Army Corps. Jake, you ready to take it away?
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, as Beth said, my name is Jake Helminiak. I'm with the Philadelphia District of the Army Corps of Engineers. I thought I'd just cover a few short things today in the 5 minutes, but I wanted to lay out just for those who aren't familiar. So I guess I should preface this too. My expertise is in hydraulic engineering, not planning, but I'll do my best to kind of go through some of the planning efforts here. So I thought it'd be a good idea to lay out the two districts that cover New Jersey. So we have the Philadelphia district, which is essentially the Delaware River watershed portion of New Jersey, and the New Jersey coast from Manasquan River south. And the New York district essentially covers the remainder of New Jersey. So in general, we partner with a range of non-federal sponsors that could be state or local governments, even NGOs. We do have planning and engineering expertise in-house, as well as a host of other disciplines in each district. So we have the capability to kind of take projects from initial feasibility through design, permitting, contracting, and all the way through construction. We do have the ability, if one district gets a little overworked, we have the ability to kind of reach out to other districts or even to contract to outside engineering firms as necessary to kind of complete all our work. So in general, USACE, to work on projects, USACE has to have authority provided by Congress to study and construct projects, right? So there are a few ways that I'll touch on, more specific to dam removal here. There's a lot more ways, but so the Continuing Authorities Program, or the CAP program, essentially has 9 kind of standing authorities aimed at smaller or less complex projects. The Section 206 aquatic ecosystem restoration is one that's more typical for dam removal, but that's one of those standing authorities there. If we get into, I guess I should mention the funding with that. So with those CAP projects, the federal expenditure, so how much we can spend total as the federal government, is capped at $10 million for a CAP study or a CAP project. So that would include the feasibility and all the way through construction. I realize it might seem disparate to some to say smaller and less complex and also 10 million in the same phrase, but our budgets are that way sometimes. So for the feasibility study of a CAP program, the first $100,000 is totally federal funded. And then it's a 50-50 cost share after that. And then if we recommend the project to go through the construction, then the design and construction is shared 65-35. So 65 fed, 35 non-fed. So the other way we can be involved is kind of on a more specific authority. So a project would be specifically authorized by Congress, either through an existing authorization or, written into new legislation through Water Resource Development Act or some other legislation. And that those general investigation program or the GI program is aimed at the larger, more complex projects. They could take years to kind of get into the budget. They do kind of compete nationally, right? So, but because they are those larger, more complex projects, there is no cap on the federal expenditure for GIs. The feasibility study is similar, but there's no initial cost, boost from the Fed there. It just starts off at the 50-50 cost share. Right now they're laid out to kind of be a $3 million maximum for the feasibility study. And so 3 million max and take 3 years to kind of complete that. And then the design and construction would kind of be shared typically similar to the CAP program. One last way we could kind of be involved, less project-based, but more like a study, the planning assistance to the states. So the typically smaller studies, maybe 50 to 100,000, kind of conducted at a planning level of detail. So not really including the detailed design for project construction. For that type of a study, again, it would be cost shared 50-50. But implementation of any plan that came out of that would be, the responsibility of the non-federal sponsor. We've seen it in the past that, a PAS could kind of recommend a project go into a CAP study or project, but there's no kind of automatic continuation from there. And then Beth, if you go to the next slide, you know, there's a ton more ways that we, you know, folks can partner with USACE within New Jersey. So I thought I'd just provide this link to a document put together by our IWR. And then my contact information is on the bottom right. So if I can't answer any questions right now, you can feel free to email me or call me, and I'll put you in contact with someone who can.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Jake. That was great. Lots of information. I don't know if it might also be helpful to put that link in the chat. I'm not sure that they are going to be able to grab it from, you know, essentially sharing my screen. I thought we could take, before we transition to the next speaker, 30 seconds for a quick poll. As described yesterday, these polls help us to better know what you folks need, and it also helps us to know, you know, what other sort of information sessions or other resources we can provide. So Michelle, if you want to go ahead and put up that poll. This is a quick one. Take a minute to read, and we can watch the progress. So we want to make sure we get most of you to take a second to reply. You can hit submit on the bottom. Okay, give you another 10 seconds, and then Michelle, you would be able to wrap that up, and we'll transition to our next speaker, which is Keith Fritchie from New Jersey Trout Unlimited. And I'll take a moment to say that there are many chapters of Trout Unlimited throughout the state. Keith works for the statewide organization, so you guys might be familiar with, or more familiar with, the work of your local chapter.
Can you hear me, Beth?
Yep, there we go.
Great, thanks, and hi everybody. So yeah, I'm Keith Fritchie, the Habitat Restoration Coordinator for kind of the northwest portion of the state, but TU is a national nonprofit. We were founded in 1959 along the Au in Michigan. We now have about 300,000 members across the country and about 220 national staff members, of which I am one of those. So collectively, our mission is to conserve, protect, and restore cold water fisheries and their watersheds. And we have this national conservation agenda to kind of accomplish that mission, following this PRRS model, where we look to protect high quality, often headwater habitat, reconnect watersheds through barrier removal and allowing both flows and fish to kind of move freely through a watershed, restore degraded habitat, and then sustain our efforts through outreach and education. As you can see from this quote here, dam removal is certainly one of the strategies that we take to kind of accomplish this model and this mission. The right project is definitely one of the best and most effective ways to increase both habitat quality, quantity, and eventually the abundance of wild trout. So as Beth was kind of alluding to, our organizational structure is a little bit interesting. I'm at TU. You can somewhat think of us as a sort of three-legged stool, where we have our staff members. In New Jersey, you're most likely to interact with either me or Jen or Green, our Eastern Policy Director. Jen covers basically the Mid-Atlantic to the Upper Midwest, but she is a policy whiz and knows a lot both in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. But then we have our grassroots chapters. This is really kind of the heart and soul of TU, where we have about 3,000 members in New Jersey who are kind of anglers or just trout or river lovers in general, who organize in these local chapters. There are 10 in New Jersey. You can go to find your chapter at tu.org to see where you might lie geographically. And those chapter members then send representatives to our state council. The state council basically connects local chapters to our national level organization. And so each of these different entities kind of has their own organizational structure. On a day-to-day basis, we're acting for the most part independently, but we really rely on one another and interact to both develop projects and implement those projects, hence the kind of three-legged stool metaphor. Beth, can you go to the next slide, please? So what are we actually doing in New Jersey when it comes to dam removal? It's definitely one of our strategies in the state. So first, we're serving on the policy, monitoring, and feasibility working groups of the SDRP. We coordinate and fundraise for dam removal projects. That's happening both by the chapters as well as state staff. I would say that, be transparent and say that I'm pretty new to dam removal myself. So thank you, Beth, for kind of organizing this series of webinars. It's been really helpful for me. But I think this is a really, really important kind of projects we should be undertaking in New Jersey to benefit our wild trout populations. And TU also has some smaller dollar funding that certain projects might be eligible for if they do benefit our wild fisheries. Kind of a real strength of TU is our volunteer workforce. So kind of our chapter members across the state are really eager to get involved in stream restoration in any way possible, whether that's kind of effectiveness monitoring for projects or post-project planting. And finally, what I do a lot of kind of with my background in population biology is to identify dam removal projects that are really going to contribute best to Trout Unlimited's mission. So on the little map on the right, you can see just the red dams that are either within or directly adjacent to our wild trout habitat in New Jersey in blue. So we try to think about which projects might be most effective in benefiting trout habitat. And at finer scales, not all dams are the same in terms of their ecological impacts. So these graphs, each of these bars is a dam. The different levels is the amount of impact they have on temperatures in the downstream portion below that dam. So we just try to figure out which projects are going to be most beneficial to our wild trout, increasing both the quantity and quality of our cold water habitat. So that's really kind of where our focus and our expertise is in Trout Unlimited. So if you have any potential projects in mind and really want to know, would they benefit trout populations and therefore would TU be a good partner for those projects, please reach out to me. And thanks again.
Okay. Thanks very much, Keith. We'll transition now to the Division of Land Use Resource Protection. And Michael Tropiano will give us a little snapshot of what he works on.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Mike Tropiano. I'm with NJDEP Land Resource Protection within the Bureau of Land Use Management. We're based in the Trenton 501 State Building. We're all currently working from home though. I work specifically with inland regulation, but we also have coastal and urban and tideland groups. So what we do is we regulate land use activities through a permitting process in accordance with the Freshwater Wetlands Protection Act rules, the Flood Hazard Area Control Act rules, Coastal Area Facility Review Act, and Highlands Water Protection and Planning Act. Mainly with dam removals and repairs, you can be dealing with the Freshwater Wetlands Control Act rules, and that regulates wetlands, any disturbance proposed to wetlands, wetland transition area, or state open waters, and partially Flood Hazard Area Control Act rules. This is mainly done through, that review is mainly done through the Bureau of Dam Safety though. And Flood Hazard Area Control Act rules, they regulate the state open waters, riparian zones, and flood hazard area. The permitting that would be required for a dam removal would be a Freshwater Wetlands General Permit number 18, which requires the permit issued by the Bureau of Dam Safety, backfilling of the uppermost 18 inches of any excavation, replanting of disturbed areas with native plant species, and stabilizing those disturbed areas after the work is done. The Flood Hazard Area Control Act rules touch a little bit on requirements for a dam. It's under 7:13-12.11 if anyone wants to look that up. But like I said, dam safety reviews the requirements for the Flood Hazard Area Control Act rules. And before you guys submit any permits to land resource protection, I highly recommend you come in for a pre-application meeting and that you speak with a consultant that has experience submitting permits for land resource protection. That's all I got.
Okay, again, somebody else that we might be hearing from again, Michael, when it comes time to focus in a little bit more on permitting. And I will second what you said about coming in early on any kind of permit. Always smart to ask questions up front as much as possible. Okay, we're going to transition to the DEP's Division of Fish and Wildlife. And Eric Bohm's going to lead us through what they do over there.
Okay, thanks, Beth. My name's Eric Bohm. I'm a fisheries biologist with NJDEP, Division of Fish and Wildlife. And obviously when you're talking about dams, you talk about rivers, you talk about fish. So with that, we help the partnership out. We provide professional guidance with regards to, freshwater, anadromous, warm water, cold water, invasive fish populations, pretty much any fish found in the state, we provide guidance with. So keep that in mind. We develop fisheries-related metrics and considerations for any potential projects with the partnership. That's still ongoing. We're still working on stuff like that to provide to you, the public. We also conduct pre and post monitoring via a variety of sampling techniques. So obviously, if we do take a dam out, it's good to have data that what was there beforehand. And then if the dam comes out, you want to be able to document success. And success often can be, did the fish move further upriver? Did you increase habitat for migratory fish, et cetera, et cetera? So you want to be able to get in there and sample post as well, and you can document success that way. So we provide that when and where possible. Other staff members we have the environmental review process. Obviously, as Clint mentioned earlier, that takes into consideration any of the timing restrictions that might go into effect with a project to protect spawning fish and other permitting issues for potential projects statewide. Also within our division, we have the Endangered and Non-Game Species Program, which provides guidance for endangered species that may be encountered. And with that, it's typically, in my experience, freshwater mussels. They're often very relevant with any dam project. So that bureau within Fish and Wildlife can provide guidance with those. That's all I got. I probably talked too fast, but long story short, we're here for the fish and the fisheries with any dam projects. So that's our area of expertise. So if you have any questions with fisheries, reach out to us and we'll be happy to get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Eric. And say hello to all those mussels. Yes, anybody who works on dam removal gets to know some of them very up close and personal. Okay, so now we're going to transition to our last speaker from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Beth Friday.
Hi guys, I'm Beth Friday. I am our Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program Coordinator at the New Jersey Field Office. That's a partners program. There's one in every state. So if you're interested in what we can provide, no matter what state you're in, you can get assistance from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So we can provide a variety of assistance with dam removals. Dam removal, it speaks to our priority of aquatic connectivity. It's a very high priority for the region that we're in. And so anytime we see an opportunity to improve aquatic connectivity, we are very interested in assisting. So the first way we can help is through financial assistance. We have 3 programs at our field office, and I put the logos up there. There's the coastal program, the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program, which is the one that I lead up for New Jersey, and then our natural resource damage assessment and restoration program. So through those 3 programs, we can work really on any property with any partner to assist with dam removal. So those are funding sources within our local office here. There's other programs like the Delaware Bay Basin Act. There's a couple of programs that came out of that act. We administer them via the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. NIFWF is the acronym that we use. And then we also have the Fish Habitat Partnership, which is another source of federal funds. So as you can see, we've got a lot of ways to help financially because these dam removals are so beneficial where we try to find as many ways as we can to help promote them. We also provide technical assistance. And so at my office, we have a trained wildlife biologist, fisheries biologist. And one of my colleagues is actually a marine biologist. So we have all the ologies that you need to bring to your project. We don't have engineers in our office, but again, this kind of work is so important to this region that at our regional office, we have engineers who are specifically dedicated and trained in fish passage. And they will work with us a lot on these projects to make sure what our local professional engineers will pass fish, because there's, depending on the fish that you want to target, the fish that you want to move, there's different flow depths, velocities, and that's what these guys think about all day, every day. And they're very happy to provide their assistance. So that's the suite of technical assistance that we can provide. And then finally is the permitting aspect. And this part overlaps a lot with what Evan Madlinger with NRCS talked about. In fact, we often work side by side with Evan on dam removal projects, because it just, there's so many moving parts to a dam removal project that the more partners you have on board, the better the process goes. So we work a lot with NRCS. And so we work through the same federal compliance process that he talked about, the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, the Historic Preservation Act. And then what's really cool is the Endangered Species Act, which we all work through, any federal agency will. Those folks for New Jersey are housed in my office. So I work very closely with them. We have good relationships with them. And so it makes our consultation process easier, because any work that I do on the ground, I have to consult with the Endangered Species Act, the same as anybody else does. So I have to make sure that whatever guidance the endangered species staff would give John Q. Public, I will be also following that guidance. And so it's a lot easier when you see that person every day, except for during COVID, when I haven't seen them in 9 months. But normally I would see them in the office and have chats about our projects. And so that makes life a lot easier for these projects. Another interesting thing about the consultation process is the Army Corps of Engineers was here, and they talked about how they work on dam removals. And in most other states, they're also part of the permitting process. But the state of New Jersey has assumed that part of, I think it's a Clean Water Act. And so if you have funds, federal funds to do a dam removal, but you don't have a federal partner, it makes the historic preservation consultation a little tricky, because when you do the tribal consultation part of it with federally recognized tribes, it's really supposed to be a nation to nation consultation. Like, we consider those tribes to be, sovereign nations. The United States should be the one consulting with them. So having a federal partner on board like Fish and Wildlife Service or NRCS, we can step in and do that tribal consultation and be consistent with the respect that a nation to nation consultation provides. So there's a lot that we can do to help. We really don't ever do anything in a vacuum. We work really closely with all the partners that you heard talk today. And these are the parts of that process that we can contribute to. And I'll put my name and email and phone number in the chat box. No matter which program you were interested in, if you wanted to reach out, I can be that gateway for any of them for you. I'm Elizabeth Friday, Beth Friday. Maybe I should have put Elizabeth on my on my names to not confuse us with Beth. But yeah, if you guys got projects, we're really interested in partnering with you.
Okay, and thanks very much, Beth. U.S. Fish and Wildlife will definitely be somebody who will be on our funding information session when we have that upcoming. So I know a lot of attendees today are representing municipalities, or they might be representing a county, various other entities, and you might be asking yourself, like, why do I need a partner? I do big projects all the time. I don't know if I need a partner. So I think that when it comes to dam removal, you might need a partner if you need any help at all with understanding the ecological benefits or impacts of your project. If you need help to prepare a permit or a grant application, if you need help to understand federal programs or to understand state regulations, partners can also help you complete federal compliance documents like NEPA, Endangered Species Act documents, or Historic Preservation Act. and also help you to connect with local residents and government. And importantly, and you'll learn more about this in the funding session, a lot of entities out there are not eligible for certain funding. So sometimes it helps to have a partner along who would be able to help you with some of, to actually be eligible for grant programs. So we just featured state and federal partners, a statewide nonprofit, but some of your best bets might in fact be more regional entities. So we have on, I don't know if people want to wave with either their real hand or their Zoom hand. I know we have representatives on the call today from the Musconetcong Watershed Association, Raritan Headwaters Association, Delaware Riverkeeper, Watershed Institute, and Duke Farms, who are all part of and meet as part of the statewide dam removal partnership. And also, I know that there are some folks on here from different Trout Unlimited chapters. So again, feel free to throw your contact info in the chat or to try to connect here. We're going to continue to do our best to connect folks. But I think right now we're going to take another 30 seconds for a poll, and then we're going to move into questions. So Michelle, if you want to put the second poll down. Again, some of this information helps us to know what sort of information sessions we might want to design going forward. As long as we're going to continue to meet in this way, we might as well know what it is you all want to know. Okay, it looks like we're not quite to the halfway mark, so we'll give it another half minute or so. In the meantime, you can be typing your questions into chat if you've finished with the poll. I don't know if we'll be brave enough to have people ask their questions live by unmuting. We have almost 90 people on the call, so it's a little bit of a challenge. So it might be safer to just go ahead and type your question in.
Beth, while people are typing questions into chat, there was a question earlier that some people have responded to in chat related to concern about non-native species making their way into rivers once dams are removed. And so I just wanted to throw it out there to you or to anyone else if there was a response to that.
Okay, I'll give my response first, and then I'll ask any one of the partners to, who have already contributed or other to jump in. So that is, that is something that we hear consistently. It is, I am sure, a legitimate concern. I haven't worked on a dam removal, and some of the dam removals that I've worked on now are more than a decade old where that became a problem. I think it depends very much on where the dam is that you're working. I think it's also important to think for a moment, those invasive species are ones that humans have introduced. So we're kind of dealing with a human-made problem. But I'm going to ask any of our presenters, or does anyone know of a case in New Jersey where that has happened?
Hey, can you hear me? This is Mike Tropiano, NJDEP.
Okay.
Yeah, so actually I was working on permitting for a project with the National Park Service, and they were removing some obstructions from a stream. And one of the obstructions they actually decided not to move because it was shown to block non-native trout from like spreading into native trout territory. Okay, so they removed everything else except for that one barrier.
So that I've heard of, when we have, genetically native population of brook trout, protecting them from other, from any kind of harmful mixing there. And I know Eric Boehm, you were about to answer, I think.
Yeah, I can't speak for a certain location, but that's always something we think about. Obviously, for the freshwater side, it's mostly snakeheads and flathead catfish are the buzzy species right now. And a lot of times they are a major factor. Like obviously we'll have snakeheads below a dam, and if we want to take that out, there's always the potential to increase that spread further upstream. So we always weigh that. Is the taking the dam out to increase habitat for maybe spawning herring more beneficial, or spreading snakeheads? It's always a factors we consider and weigh, but there's no magic bullet or perfect scenario. And a lot of situations too, most dams, there was a big push for fish ladders back in the early 2000s. So a lot of these dams, yes, they are impediments, but they still have fish ladders that provide access for herring and shad to move upstream. So those can also be vectors to possibly spread, snakeheads or flatheads or other invasive species upstream. So that's always a consideration. There's no certain answer right now, but we always think about it, and it weighs heavily on our decisions to go forward with taking a dam out or not.
Yeah, I know that the question is out there, but I didn't know of any case where it has happened. Do you know of that?
I can't think of one off the top of my head, no.
Okay. Always interested to learn, and as a matter of fact, I've mentioned this to the partnership before. It's going to be something that we discuss in the new year. It is a topic that folks are talking about, so it's something that we all need to learn a little bit more about. But I haven't heard of it actually happening, although I completely respect the concern, and I think it's something we need to learn about and understand. Michelle, I think you could probably end the poll if you haven't already. And then do we have other questions out there? Eric in the...
That is it. Okay.
So on the 14th of December, we're going to go a little bit of a deeper dive into permitting. We'll have some of the folks you've already met back, but then also some of the things that we didn't talk about today, we will talk about, and that is, talking to your county or the DOT, if you have bridges or other infrastructure nearby. So be on the lookout for the invitation and information to register for those two. So it's permitting on the 14th, and then everybody's favorite on the 15th. That's why I saved it till last, because it is, without funding, you're not going to go anywhere. But we had a little taste of some of the funding programs out there from our speakers today. But we also will have some new ideas. And again, that a big part of the reason to partner is because that will help you to bring in funding from a bunch of different sources that any individual private landowner may or may not be eligible for, or individual town or county. But by partnering up with folks, sometimes it allows money to flow to a project where you wouldn't have had that opportunity before. Okay. Forgetting, I will put the offer out on the table again in case you weren't here at the very beginning. If you have a group that is working on a dam removal and you missed the introduction, you missed yesterday's basics, I'm very generous with this offer since I can do it from the comfort of my own home, but I'd be happy to do a Zoom meeting for you, or you can also request, when we have it ready, the recording of yesterday's presentation.
Hey Beth, there's a good question in the chat box.
Okay.
Yeah, it's thank you, Beth. Is the downstream flooding increase measured at the property line, at a property line, or downstream of the dam?
I'm waiting for our expert to jump in.
I can take that one. So if there's not a specific location, we want to avoid any impacts to obviously structures downstream. If there is a home downstream, we can't allow the increase to occur there. Immediately downstream, if there's a minor increase in flooding within a few hundred feet of the dam, but there's absolutely no structure, no increased flooding risk, then that's we can work around that. But what we're trying to avoid is increase in flooding to anything that's a roadway, a house, any industrial buildings, anything basically that's a structure. So there's not a specific location, but the goal is to minimize any impacts that will open up that dam owner essentially to liability from a legal standpoint, that, you know, what they proposed has made flooding worse for an individual or, you know, a county road or a state highway or something like that.
To add to that, we'd also say like no adverse impacts downstream. So even if there is, like Lynn said, a little bit of increased flooding, if it doesn't cause an adverse impact to any structure, road, or property, then we'd be okay with that.
Okay. Yeah, something that, you know, comes into play very much. These dams were in general put in, you know, in what were villages and are now cities and towns. So working on a dam removal that does not have nearby infrastructure is pretty unheard of. So you are always going to be looking at, you know, any impacts, obviously downstream flooding, but, you know, you want to make sure that you're not increasing scour on downstream or upstream roads or bridges. So, you know, there is quite a bit to consider. And again, we'll probably talk a little bit more about that when it comes to permitting and how you need to satisfy regulators that you're not going to do any harm and all good.
Just to follow up on that, I know there's been discussion about other states and not having similar requirements to us, but we are very different from, you know, a dam removal in Nebraska, where, you know, there's really nothing downstream but open farmland. So we do take it a little more seriously than other states, but I think it is warranted based on the population density and the development that we see in New Jersey.
Yes, and that brings to mind something else that people, it might be good to enlighten folks that when you go online and you look at something that says, you know, what is the average cost of a dam removal, and it'll give you some, you know, dollar figure per feet or something, that is not in New Jersey. So I don't know, that might be down in Alabama or something, but you know, don't be fooled by those calculators, because again, you know, not only because of infrastructure, but just because of, you know, everything up in the Northeast is a little bit more expensive than in other regions. So again, a partner can help with those kind of calculations and conversations as well. Okay, I think we're on that. We have 1 minute or no, 2 minutes for any last questions about upcoming sessions, questions about yesterday, anything at all?
Nothing in the chat, Beth.
Okay, I think we might as well call it quits then, 2 minutes early. Gives you a little bit of breathing room if you have a 2 o'clock meeting. But thank you all very much for joining us. Don't forget to check out njdams.org for the upcoming sessions, or for other things, you know, other resources for information, or to connect to us via the information portal on njdams.org. Okay, thanks very much.